So what's the big problem with wealth creation? How do people like us, who didn't inherit a boatload of money, who are investing and building wealth from our own blood, sweat and tears, how do we invest in a way that gives us remarkable results and become financially free before retirement age? I don't know about you, but I am sick of hearing from wealth gurus and experts who don't walk their own talk and prescribe strategies that are a one-size-fits-all approach. For self-made people like you and me, I'm here to tell you that you don't need to be superhuman or already wealthy to reach financial freedom earlier than 65. This is the Alternative Investing Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited about talking today on the topic of how do you know if you are ready for alternative investments. So I feel really excited by the momentum that this podcast is having and the very excited emails that I'm getting from people who are starting to tweak that maybe there's a flaw in the traditional wealth creating model and that alternative investments are literally a game changer from the viewpoint of achieving financial freedom effectively and fast. The starting point for today's podcast, which I want to kind of put up as a bit of a pre-frame to how do you know if you're ready for alternative investing? The question that you need to answer right off the bat is what percentage of your living costs are actually covered right now, today, by your passive income if you stopped work? Meaning if the business collapsed, if you couldn't get a job, if something happened, if something life-altering happened and you couldn't earn any more income from the way that you've earned income for the first part of your life, like what percentage of your living costs are covered? And I can tell you anecdotally from having spoken to hundreds of investors over the last 10, 15 years that the majority of people are good at building capital, meaning they've got a great net worth, but their passive income is next to zero. It's really poor, or it's certainly a very small percentage of their living expenses. So I want to kind of put that up front as do that, and then the rest of what I'm going to say is really kind of the flavor that you want to add. So there are really three things that I think are great indicators for whether or not you are ready for alternative investments. The first one is that you have a solid capital base. You're already an investor is probably a good way of saying that, or you have capital in the form of money that's just sitting around, sitting idle. I know that a lot of business owners are very careful about the money management inside of their business. The minute the money flows outside the business or they don't know what to do with it, a lot of people like the idea of having a large cash at bank, but perhaps if you're someone who's got a lot of cash sitting idle, then putting them into things like alternative investments could be worth considering. If you have assets that have a high component of capital that again you feel are maybe, underperforming or just not giving you what you need and want, or the exception to having that solid capital base is really you've got a business that's a cash cow, you've got an income that's a cash cow, and you're in that situation where you're prepared to divert some of that directly into building your passive income stream. Now, that last one is probably not the norm, and certainly what I encourage you to do is build a capital base first. But there are the odd exceptions of people who just have super high income and they simply don't know what to do with their money. They're not necessarily interested in the idea of having a high net worth on paper. They actually want to create life-altering wealth. So that's the first thing. You need to have money to play with. You need capital to play with. The second thing, I think is really important is you need to be someone who wants another income stream that you can bank on. There's all sorts of motivations that people have for building wealth, for building passive income. But specifically when we're talking about alternative investments, the majority of people are really seeking an insurance policy, if you like, one that they can actually rely on. So it's about self-insurance. If something goes wrong, do I have another stream of income that I could rely on? The second motivation that people have for, wanting another income stream outside of their business is it's just an escape hatch. A lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs they run great businesses, but unfortunately they're not in that situation where they can either sell their business and bank on that big payday, or they are in a situation where maybe they could sell their business, but they just don't want to rely on that. And they're looking for a clean exit or an escape hatch, I like to call it, that will get them where they want to go in a relatively short space of time. And then the third, component of the, wanting another income stream is just the simple idea of having some choice. I think a lot of humans like the idea that they do whatever it is they do because they love it, not because they have to. And unfortunately, and there's probably several people that I'm coaching right now who they're okay with the work that they do, but there's a sense of just almost like an affirmation, that they have to really love or pretend to love what they do because they have no choice. But if you really pulled back the curtain and gave them another choice, they possibly would alter what it is they do from, 9 to 5 every day. Yeah, I think wanting another income stream that you can bank on is definitely the second component of knowing that alternative investments could be a fit for you. The third, I think, critical quality that you need if you're thinking about alternative investments is that you are someone who is open to out-of-the-box thinking. I think one of the big challenges about alternative investments is that because you can get really unbelievable results in a very short space of time, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of wealth professionals who will poo-poo it and say, well, it must be a scam. It can't be real. Unfortunately, when you don't understand something, it's just easier to kind of dismiss it. So alternative investments are definitely for those people who are open to a new way of thinking, who maybe look at the current wealth model that's kind of peddled by most wealth professionals and recognize that there's some element of it being broken. How is it that there's an expectation that we come into the workforce, around the age of 20 and we're expected to pedal and push for another 45 years before we're allowed to get off and do things that we actually love? If you see the urgency in becoming financially independent, if you recognize that you want to be that person who puts themselves in a position where they can actually enjoy their wealth while they're still young enough, there's definitely some consideration that you should be thinking about when you're choosing investments. So alternative investments could potentially be a really great fit for you if you like the idea of getting off early. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was talking to someone last week, and really, really astute guy and his wife, and they had a plan that had been laid out for them by a financial planner that was maybe going to shave 1 to 3 years off their timeline from retirement or traditional retirement at 65. So I think the idea was that they were going to retire somewhere around, I think 61, 62, something like that. So it was, better than average, but, not remarkable in my opinion. And it was doing all the traditional things like socking away lots of money into superannuation, which, by the way, I'm not saying is a bad thing. But what I'm saying is that, the traditional model looks at products and investment opportunities that everybody else is looking at. And if you do what everybody else does, you can only expect the mediocre results of a comfortable retirement, if that, at around the age of 60 to 65. If you are someone who likes the idea of having the freedom to choose how you spend your time, whether you continue your business or you do something else, or you do nothing, or you get behind charities and causes that you care about, or you help your community, or you support your kids, then alternative investments are definitely something worth looking at. So I guess, if I were to summarize that, where I started today was, how do you know if you're ready for alternative investments? Well, the first thing you should be asking is, what percentage of your current living costs are covered by the passive income you already have? If you stopped working, where would you be? And if the answer to that is, well, wow, I'm really miles away from the kind of financial freedom that I need. If you have a solid asset base, if you want another income stream that you can bank on, and if you're open to outside of the box thinking, then I definitely think that alternative investments could be a fit for you. Now, that's just the starting point. Obviously, you need to actually, look deeper. Make sure you understand the opportunities before you get involved. Make sure that you have your ducks in a row, that you're structured properly, that you've optimized the assets that you've already got. Alternative investments are a fit for not everyone, but for the select few who are ambitious, who want financial freedom, who care about how they spend their time. Alternative investments are definitely worth thinking about. In any case, guys, I have a playbook on my website that could be a good starting point for those of you who are interested in understanding more. So if you go to nkosiwealth.com, just feel free to grab a copy. It really, I think the big challenge for a lot of people is they just don't know a lot about it. So this is really a bird's eye overview of what they are, what's involved, and a bit more of a deep dive into who they're a fit for. Anyway, till next time, guys, take care.
You've been listening to the Alternative Investing Podcast. If you're feeling frustrated that despite doing everything right in the property investing playbook and you're no closer to financial freedom, then head on over to nkosiwealth.com to learn more about how you can use alternative investments to catapult your investing income and blend strategies to shave decades off your timeline to financial freedom. See you on the next episode.